So
I'd like to wish all of you a good morning and welcome.
that do gindu ngaranzo nyamle khare namba inare tosam gomsum ani labasumgi nyamle khare nana tene di manangi ngala tene kulong di kechembo re ani tinga chinambala yani yandu chartu tensu chigis.
So whatever practice we may be engaged in, whether it's study, contemplation, or meditation, or any of the three trainings, regardless of what we may be practicing, our motivation is extremely important. So once again, please check your motivation and revise it properly for this Dharma teaching.
Ne lagbardu danda kapsuba pangarazo jasilale jasinguju thongme gi zebi gi jasilale di tene tekba chimbe ta yenda gebu chungu dingbu chimbos de nane tene kebardu gebu chimbu gi lam nyamle chidang gi korre di endu ne tekba chimbu ke shisha chine tene kiranzo kulong de ya tene ji tekba chimbu gi kulong rang jigbo mayimba che rang tse di jigbo mayimba che se jema jigbo mayimba korwa ni thare thardu jigbo mayimba simje thamji gi che do tene nga tering shwe de nyengi samba chigi gomba chigi samne nyero ches.
So we've been studying Gyaltseng Ngolcho Sangpo's incredible work, The 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva. And since we're currently studying and trying to understand this text, which belongs to the Mahayana, or great vehicle from among the paths of lesser, middling, and greater beings, we've arrived at this part which so eloquently describes the path of greater being. So likewise, our own motivation should be that of a greater being. So please listen to the Dharma teaching for the sake of not just our own personal benefit, but to free every single sentient being there is from samsara, for the sake of all sentient beings without exception. I'm going to study, reflect, and put into practice these 37 practices of a bodhisattva. So this is how our motivation should be. So please listen to our Dharma teaching accordingly.
Tene jasilale shungdila ni thomar geba legide pardu geba shungide ne thamar geba jugide sene sumdu ne sumgi nane de thomar geba legide de la chobar choba ta samar tamjaba che ne pardu geba shungide de la ngonru gi chu ta ngoshi gi chu ni che de ngonru de la chu dundi song chabare ne ngoshi dila tene kebusum gi lam la lapsul kebusum dela kebu chungu kebu dingbu kebu chembo che ani kebu chembo gi lam ta kebu chungu dingbu song sabare tene thanda kapso kebu chembo gi lam la letere kebu chembo gi lam dila ya tene janji chodu tu kesu sim kesu che 아니 니바딜라 택바 심베게 람딜라 심게딜라 군줍게 심게 심게다 된담게 심게 니도 데나네 군줍게 심게딜라 nyamsha da jetops nidu tene nyamsha la tene thaji ngola nyamje ngarazo tonglen daw nyamsha kapsu kuzo khana la nyamsha kapsu tene nyamje gome chikdang jetop kapsu tene nyamlen chedang rimba choose to the rimba chu de tanda ngarazo na tendere lamkirs yana soba komsul daw number choose those and the ring cups baba de chu gi na ne de ni sarbare ta sumba de tok de res.
So this text is subdivided into 3 sections. The goodness in the beginning, the goodness in the middle, and the goodness at the end. And the goodness at the beginning, we've already covered. That concerned the homage and the pledge to compose that we found at the beginning of the text. And so we now find ourselves in the goodness in the middle, which is further subdivided into the paths of the lesser, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The goodness in the middle is subdivided into the preliminaries and the main part of practice. And we've reached the main part of practice, which teaches us the paths of the lesser, middling, and greater beings. And so we are now concerned with the path of greater beings, which is primarily concerned with the practice of generating bodhicitta, setting our minds on great awakening. And so this practice has preliminaries and a main practice and a subsequent practice. And included in the main part of the practice of generating bodhicitta, there's 2 elements to generating bodhicitta. There's relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. And we're currently discussing this subject of generating relative bodhicitta, which is categorized in terms of the meditation session itself, the equipoise or training, and the how to train in post-meditation. The meditation session itself concerned us with practicing Tonglen, the equalization and exchange of ourselves with others for the sake of generating bodhicitta. And then in the post-meditation, in which we bring this training onto the path, there are 10 aspects of which we're currently discussing. The third, which involves patience or forbearance with negative circumstances. And so that's what we're currently studying.
Yeah. The Jacob gi kapsu dini kingi lamdu kerwa di chuchu gi nani tiring kapsu baba dini ta nipa di charchi ta sumba tiridu mingimba lamdu kerwa se di insay di ki tsawa di gashik dala mingi na tsoba tongsum khabar chokbar jena ya jambi simgi larayan dini ki yunden juba jasi lali yin sundu di tsawa di.
So to repeat what was previously said, the practice of post-meditation has 10 parts, of which we've arrived at the third, which is bringing negative circumstances onto the path, particularly encounters with difficult people. So the
라 직제비라 자와
So forgive me for since I'm subbing, I'm not entirely sure which where we're at. So I believe we're at on verse 12, please correct me if I'm wrong, which reads, even if others in the grips of great desire should steal or encourage others to take away all the wealth that I possess, to dedicate to them entirely my body, possessions, and all my merits from the past, present, and future. This is the practice of the Bodhisattvas. Oh, so I'm sorry, we've already covered that, and we're at the next one, which reads, even if others should seek to cut off my head, though I've done them not the slightest wrong, to take
next that one. Di dunga lamche ro, ta di jugla minyen balam.
Oh, hagazong, minyen bala.
That's minyen balam to kim.
Okay, so sorry, we're even on the next one after that, which concerns us with
Jase laglen korangi sobdi manani peje di jubshilare.
Jubshibara. That's all my laptop. Don't talk. So this verse we're dealing with is particularly concerned with taking a bad reputation or negative speech by others onto the path. It reads, even if others should declare before the world all manner of unpleasant things about me, to speak only of their qualities in return with a mind that's filled with love. This is the practice of all the Bodhisattvas.
Tadi gashi dala minyen na bas. Tadi di tingsang aranzo chida shubayina tang aranzo tingsangi jiso nanglo la di pe shukchumbo cha degere. Tang aranzo na minyen na sidu zane ta ta kirang choba jire, kirang la nutu yo mare. Tang aranzo maang chewa choba chige maang chewa jila nga nutu me nga chwe yakbo shini degi yo. Ina ya ngegi chedu, ngegi chedu segore, ngegi mingi kang pe kyabra mangbo tangsha. Ta dinsa social media gyachumburwa, Facebook, Instagram se, ta dra menda ki thola, tene tumne, nyunyu kirang mi dukjare du. Ko dukjare, ko kumare, ko jakpare, ko choba yakbo mare, ko chikchiri, ni lama zumare, ta tawaye na lama zumare se, ta ani choba migya jikdenbaye na ko sokpo re se, ta menda sen ta Instagram, ta Facebook de la luk shakba ina. Minyen se to tani nyembo mejo ki tsik, kanchu manchung ji, ani kyabda chimbo ji, ta tanda de kapsa bawa la, na sokpa tongsum kyabar se, tongsum se to tani tongsum tong chimbo ki jikden se ge yoro. Ta dende ta kyabda peche chidub jo yo marada, ina ya dingsa ta social media la peche kyabdu gu doa zamling sama la Indonesia. Dende ki kyabda chimbo ji tangba ina ya se re, ta dende kirang dukja re, sene ende sene laba ina se re.
So this verse is particularly relevant for us in today's world, this practice of taking unpleasant speech or insults onto the path. What we're dealing with here is referred to as unpleasant speech or accusations, basically a variety of nasty things that people can say about us. And so this is particularly relevant because these days on social media, we find all kinds of unpleasant speech, all kinds of nasty things that can be said about anyone and everyone at any time. And so as Dharma practitioners, we might think that, oh, we're doing fine, we're good practitioners, we're following the path, but we still might hold on to this subtle need to make a name for ourselves on social media or anywhere else. And no matter what kind of Dharma practitioner we are on Facebook, for example, people can say whatever they want about us. They can say, you're a bad practitioner, you're a thief, you're a robber, you're a fraud, you're a fake guru. They can insult us in a variety of ways. And the verse reads, if others should declare before the world. And in Tibetan, it's clear that he's speaking of the 3,000-fold universe, this sort of planetary system, and that doesn't make it into the English translation. And while social media can't really broadcast speech to the entire 3,000-fold planetary system, it can certainly broadcast whatever anyone wants to say internationally around the whole world. So people really can declare before the world all manner of unpleasant things about us. And so we should take to heart this particular verse when we engage with people on social media, especially if they're seeking to insult us or damage our reputation.
근데 가세 데이터보지기 keranglape dukjaji singnemba ta dukjai khapra tangba ina ta social media khari ki thol ina ya teni khebar yo mares 가세 ta ngone jiga 장주 ki 장주 semba dawji ina nyamle chigin ji na ina na gyase lalen khurang ki shisha chini dogin ji ina kansa ji ina teni sik tanda jambi semji lar yan denyi ki se to sik sumbat jambi semji lar yan denyi ki yende joba gyase lalen yin sere ta 장주 semba denzo ki khari chige rosena konzo ki ta dila nganzo ki react se gore dila len tukja ka to ne tige yo mare ko 장주 ki sem ki to ne pa si che 아체 코닝제 코야나니 코디 캡타 땅에 디 독숨기 셴왕도 드론에 되니 캡타 땅 인주레스 데 인도자니 다 콜라 닝제 마도 콜라 렌 독자 자게요 마레 장주기 잠비기 심기 토네 파 따고레스 라리에 데니기스 아니 셴바딜라야 콜라 께 마주버치니 윤내조고레스 미딜라 마랄라 독자 라긴제라 ngarang la ta chige mi jige ye ta do adi changba chi song sha na.
So whether we're referring to what people say about us or to us on social media or in the real world, it doesn't really make a difference, because if we're the kind of person that is trying to practice according to the great vehicle, if we're trying to be bodhisattvas, then the crux of our practice here is not to respond in kind when we meet with unpleasant speech, when people say nasty things about us or to us, to not react as we normally would by responding in kind with by saying nasty things about them in return. And so to not do this, to generate compassion for people who may insult us, understanding that that they've fallen under the power of the three poisons, and as such, they're motivated to say insulting things, in this case about us, But if we're practicing the great vehicle, if we're trying to be bodhisattvas, then we need to develop compassion even for people who may insult us, understanding that it's due to the power of their own negative emotions. And as such, the verse reads, to speak only of their qualities in return, not to return insults for insults, but with a mind that's filled with love. This is the practice of all the bodhisattvas. So generating compassion instead of returning insult for insult is the practice we're concerned with here.
다 말한저 등산기 냠레 다 깨부 지 장주 셈바 마잉에 나랑서 다보지나 가세 나라 미지기 독자 라바이나 나 독자레 차랑 빼면서 다 멘다 라바이나 띵가족이 나랑서 서바 검도 말에 딜라 람드 키르투고 말에 가리지기레 람사 콜라파 렌로그레 교라야 독자레 교랑 빼면서기 나래야 독그레스 교랑 독자레스로 파 렌로그로야 다 장주 셈바 다보지기나 공기 미딜라 파 레말로 바치 콩알 가세 책 독자 다면다지 랍송바이나 되니 디책디 지 콜렉션 마다바치 딜라 윤된도 딴 가세 코강알라 독자 젠데진 캡라 땅도 닝제 삼바스 젠데 되니 가세 케랑게다 미망보 kil러 드로바이나 가와 지소가 나로 드와 미망보 kil러 드로바이나 딜라야 미망보 kil러 되니 미 단지 케랑라 독자 라긴지라 미지라 가드이나 독자 라데긴 캡라 땅데긴 아니 코게 코르라 가드이나 윤된주니 콩 미상보레 콩 미배약보레 콩 냠네약보레 콩아 간서거레 셈바 상보 요레스니 파 윤된주니 양 윤된주사데 단지 미랍게 코랑게 듄라 말라바치 꼭니 꼭 시드자니 임네 미망보지라 랍치 등산 간소야 엔데레 딱딱 록바레 코랑게 미듄딜라 가타니 독자 랍사딜라 저나 약보레 라가치 잡잡로도 미망보질 코 독자르 랍그라 장주 셈바든서 된데 말에 코 듄라 말라바치 코 하고고요 말다 코 미망킬로도 디도 가와 도나야 디미디 약보요르다 디미디 셈바 상보요라 스네 캡라다 로디그레스 데 윤된주바 자슬라네 숭구도 장주 셈바 더보지나 다 된데 예다 나라서 자슬라네 냠네 지긴지나 강사지나 다 된데 지고레스.
So for ordinary beings like ourselves who aren't powerful bodhisattvas, we're often unable to take insults onto the path. We're unable to bear patiently with nasty speech. What we tend to do if someone says bad things about us is immediately respond in kind. If someone tells us we suck, we'll immediately say, it's like, no, you suck. And return fire, as it were. And so if, for example, a person were to go before a crowd of people among a large gathering in a public square, if you will, and proclaim all these nasty things about us, our text says that our practice should be to speak only of their qualities in return. And so what we might do if someone says nasty things about us in front of a bunch of people, is after this is less concerned with an immediate retort, but what we might have the proclivity to do if someone is insulting us publicly, however we respond immediately, our habit will probably be afterwards to insult that person back, to try and disparage their reputation behind their backs if they've tried to do the same to us. But if we're trying to be bodhisattvas, the practice of the bodhisattvas is not to return insult for insult, but in public or in private to speak only of these people's qualities in return. So someone may say that we're bad people, and in return, we shouldn't try to convince others that they're the bad person, but say it's like, oh no, this person's a good person, this person's an honest person, this person's a good practitioner, and to only speak like this in public or in private. This is the practice of the bodhisattvas. So to speak only of their qualities in return with a mind that's filled with love. This is the practice of the bodhisattvas.
Yundenji judu korang private la maimbaji the public la teni kogi yundeni ma juni korang ge tatto basin ko yakpore ko tak ngarangi ha gore kogi ngal dugja lagiwa tongsum pana chapta tangre ina ya ngegi return la ngegi kola kye majo bachini dige len la ngegi korang la yunden juni ko mi yakbore sin to basi yunden juni public la private la malawachi ko ha gogo mari na public la ngi semba ting ne korang la yunden jogu res jo gogo yore ta nyamli chige na.
So I mistranslated a little bit. This is, in fact, primarily concerned with how we speak publicly. If someone publicly insults us, our practice is, in fact, to publicly proclaim their qualities in return. They're not going to hear whatever we might think or say in private. But as someone who publicly insults us, we should, in fact, verbally out loud to people in public speak of this person's qualities to train on the bodhisattva path.
Tadi minyen balam do kerba che ta ani ta chunga senare yana di jeto gi kapsu deni lam kenge lamjir gi chuchu na ni Tsering sumba ta shiba de meba lam do kerbas tsawa de de dromang dubu uso gashi gi changni drushin tsinge mana yang dela gewi shegi dushi gi gubar duba jasa lala yinse.
So this verse covers how to take hearing unpleasant things, what we might not want to hear, onto the path, and then as bodhisattvas in post-meditative practice. And then the following verse is about how to take derision or the exposure of our hidden faults as the path. It reads, even if others should expose my hidden faults or deride me when speaking amidst great gatherings of many people, to conceive of them as spiritual friends and bow before them in respect. This is the practice of all the bodhisattvas.
Trumang dubu uso gashi ge changni drushin tsinge mana yang dela gewi shegi dushi ki guba duba jasa lala se dita mepa lamkir se dire mepa lamkir dita dromang dubu uso gashi ge changni drushin tsinge mana yang dela gewi shegi dushi guba duba jasa lala se de Dadi dabo re ina ta de kharisi ge ursana mi mangbo zomsala yanja mi mangbo zomsala teni michigi kerang la ta kerang gi yana dra yana kerang la magangi yana kerang la jealous chigi ro tende gangsa chigi mi mangbo zomsa chigla teni kerang la zugu zug ne o de da o tsingin ba ta tukja tanji laba nashin kerang pe tukja re kerang dende re sin chik pe takbo chik zorbo chik tukja dende jes lab yona sere mana yas ta dende lab gen dila ngarang zo ge tukja mata ni ko tukja re ko kansa ngala tukja lab so se mata wa chi ni dila ngarang zo khari samlo tang gore sena ko ngarang gi gegen re do samba 랑 가르스나 니 금세 니 나라솔 팽거리 찌 가르 팽거스나 에 나라조게 나자 충으로 당해 나자 충으로 줘야 찌 딱게 개위신이 차들 찌네 소바 검사게 율 차를 가시 코게 간줄라 독자지 말람나 네 소바 검사 율 메로 데네 소바 검사 율 차한 거레스 에 아도 디숨잖아.
So to read this verse again, for the sake of bringing derision under the path, this fourth point of the post-meditation reads, even if others should expose my hidden faults or deride me when speaking amidst great gatherings of many people, to conceive of them as spiritual friends and to bow before them in respect. This is the practice of all the Bodhisattvas. So this is similar to the previous verse, but this one concerns more about our own perception, how we form our own perception of someone who might speak amidst a great gathering of many people, say someone who doesn't like us, who considers us an enemy, or someone who's jealous of us, maybe amidst a great gathering of many people, points their finger right at us and says, they're a bad person, they're a thief, exposes our hidden faults or derides us. The way we should consider such an instance is to consider such a person as a kind of teacher to us. Now, there's two reasons to consider a person who derides us as a teacher. One is because they've enabled us to lessen our pride by publicly shaming us or making accusations. We're able to reduce our pride. And secondly, they serve as an object to practice patience with. As bodhisattvas, we need things to be patient with so that we can practice patience. And people who deride us in a big crowd are just such an object of patience.
Tagarit kasi dende lab sona yanani midi che ngarangi lama ki tulba injures lama la tulni pene dene gewi shinye se di tambo ha ko gore ngarang so la gewi shinye se di chenye dawo sena re kare la sege rusena gewi shinye se di langdur gi langdur gi tenda di ha ma kongye jila kongi ngara la ha go chukba su teni ngarang so le kyen di yende ni ma shingel teni gegen de gi su kirang kyen dende dukda seni kyen le kyen ngo shi chugen yana yende mi shingel la yende mege ha ma kongye jila yende she chugen dende jila gewi shinye se ge res di indo tanda kapsu baba da mi chiki ngarang zo la zugu zug je tsik tui cheni kirang tukja re lab yong na ta chik jina nga la di kyen yu ju re kyen le kyen yu re seni zugu zug yong du ta kyen di ngo she ra kyen di ha ko ra ya ina tanda kirang la ta kyen yu ju ma re te ta maungpa la kasi kirang kyen chi ba ina ta maungpa kirang le pengi re karasana o kasi nga dila dende china dende labs ta mi chigi o nga chigi me sena tanda ma china jema kasi kirang chi ba ina ta di takta kirang la tense langir di endo gewi shinye se di kyen le kyen yimba ngotre chikin yenden la yenden yiri dende re sena ngotre chikin jila gewi shinye se gere di endo nga rangzo mi dila drama ta wachini kola le ma lo wachini dela gewi shinye gi dushe shagaya da gewi shinye gi o nga la ta tring ende chini lamten song yenden ta kyen yenden niga ngotre chi song samba lengo res
con da candes langores, tamala.
La
Tamala kirong sumpadi cantes langore,
kyo
tukutsu kiomata.
kyo da yunde ni ngote chi song samne dushi shi gore ska gwi shin ni tangi mi dugja la bro mi ngara zu mi kyuma je na ko gwi shin ni dushi cha ma re lamsang ko thokba ja gi kyo ngal dugja la sting ro mi mang ki la nga ngo chabo su sting ro tene ko la len lo gora de le ma lo go chi ni ngal la chu gwi shin ni gi lam ji ten song ngote chi song kyo rang gi kyo de ngote chi song san tene gwi shi gi dushi sha gore de la da de la gwi shi gi dushi ki se la so ne de la gubachi gewi shin duji sha ne de la lunga gi kone gubachi sem gi ting ne de la ta gewi shin duji sha.
So we should really take the time to understand what we mean here by the term spiritual friend in Tibetan Gewe Shinyan. And we shouldn't confuse a spiritual friend with a guru or a lama. But a spiritual friend is someone who enables us to practice in what we should take up and what we should abandon by introducing us both to our qualities and to our faults. So if someone points their finger at us and makes accusations publicly, says we have some fault of some kind, our perception should be not to blame this person for doing that, but to assume it's like, I probably do have the problem that they're pointing out. And so, while they may not be a guru as such, this person, by making these accusations, will benefit us later because they're introducing us to faults or qualities that we actually have. And so on the basis of this derision or accusation, even though we may not want to hear it, we're able to train as bodhisattvas. And so people who provide us an opportunity enable us to practice on the spiritual path by pointing out our flaws or our qualities and ways that we might not understand ourselves. This is what we understand as spiritual friends. And so someone who insults us or accuses us publicly does serve such a function for us. And so to conceive of them as spiritual friends and to bow before them in respect, this is the practice of all the bodhisattvas. We should recognize them as having done us a favor in being a spiritual friend and pay our respects in return.
Tazo di gewi shinyen se di ngaranzola chi yigi lab chi ka nga se de abcd labgen chi pula se ge mar thanda kapsu baba gewi shinyen se di tene chi ge chue damnga ra sungba ina te damnga di gi ngarang da sim la phen chi sim ge rangi ngaja ma nyungro tangaya da ngaja meba sue da tene duksum yang am du nga te chiga meba suye kasi dende chik pengi yo na den dile gewi shinyin sige res ngaransa gewi shinyin sin la lab chugu res dende gangsa chigi na de kaka nga yigi chigu lab sem yi nyo mongba nyugru macha ngaja macha na dile gewi shinyin samji gewi shinyin yang dangba chik chagi yo ma res.
So again, a spiritual friend is a kind of teacher, but we don't mean just the ordinary kind of teacher, who teaches us the alphabet, how to read as such. A spiritual friend is specifically means a kind of teacher who gives us something to work with, some kind of instruction that we can benefit our minds with by reducing our negative emotions. And so if someone gives us such an instruction that enables us to, say, reduce our pride or abandon our afflictions, this is sort of the general sense of someone we consider a spiritual friend. Not just an ordinary teacher who teaches us in an ordinary classroom, the ABCs or something like that. It's really someone who gives us instructions or gives us something to work with on the spiritual path, which can benefit our minds.
Dine ngaranzogi semgi gyula yobigi nyumongba ayam yana kongro ta denzo nyungro chage na dine kasi damga shuche ani nyungro chage na dine dela gevishinya ngoma de chage res din nangshinge danda mi kyumachige danda kirangla kongro langje dukja lagba ina dine dela kirangi mi dela ya pa lendu dine kongro le majawa ji digi gyumsin sheche range o ngai ngala chige nyomongba de danda de pengi mare kazi kirang mi digi dukja lagba ina kirang danda dela sik dela ya kaso gore chige kongro lae gi gu yana yul mataba ina mi digi sik dukja lagba ina kirang mataba ina kirang jema pengiri jema mi chigi khasi dukja lapsona kirang la shira dila jurwa thegu mare kirang gi semla kirang ngoi la digi mi digi dukja la yondo shira dila dongna te yo maro kirang dila reaction si do le yo maro te malendu ani next shemba chigi jema mi ji lapsona kirang dila semla guju thegu mar khondu lang mare tanda mi gi dukja ji lapsona kirang lamsa khondu langso dila len jaba ina teni jema yangyo meji khonto langso na kiranti ki double chatu reaction the double check di indu di mi de la gewi shinyen ta go gyumse chimbo yores kazi mi khonto lange mi ji yeso na.
So we should really understand the reason why we should consider such a person a spiritual friend. It's because they provide us with the opportunity to reduce our affliction, specifically our anger. And while this may not benefit, while being publicly insulted may not benefit our minds right away, it can provide us with benefit in the future, because if someone publicly insults us and we don't react in turn, we don't repay their anger with anger, then the next time someone insults us, we are less likely to have an angry reaction. And so they've enabled us to benefit our minds by reducing our anger. Most of the time what we do is, if someone publicly insults us, is react angrily right away and return their insults for insults. And if this is how it goes, then the next time someone insults us, because it's going to happen, our angry reaction might be double what it is now if we create this habit of responding angrily. But if we don't react angrily, then this enables us to gradually reduce the affliction of anger. And this is why we should respect a person who insults us as a spiritual friend.
The better was shy and I can also think some Nangla Yukingi Choga Kimere Yana Gabure Kabal Denzunguda Ani Ngoma Samsam Mala Roba Kashiki Loma Kashiki Kapaligidu O da Ne Choga di Pe Yokda Sabudu Nima Takba Shogwe Lani Tapja Pekja Mango Lab Digidu Tini Koran Yamli Chidan Church again Inayam Keja Mambo Lab Chinga Lab Mesekanga Dux Simbala Not a Mesekondo Langi Duse, Kong Tong Yona, Kokeja Mawashian, the Kondo Pe Langi Duse Chokadilla, Dimedi. That the name Karichigores, that the Tapshidi. The Nyungro Tanga Tapshi Karichigores, Tenegi. That to mix a con tapshis Kayo Mare Yaksho de la Kirangi Gigain some gorilla. 계란 기위신이래 삼래 저는 저가 가시 코랑기 계란로 콘도 말라네 계란 수바 간디지 공기 계란기 가제 충으로 땅에기 탑세 거래 깬디 계란기 가독디레스 가시 독자 랍송나 딜레 계란 다 수바 곰 계란 딜라니 가제데 충으로 돼 콘도 말랑 아니 딜라엔 계란 기위신이기 두시 샤송나 계란 콘라 콘도 랑고 마레스니 라브인슬라이
So to provide a story as an example, there was a woman who called Tulku to ask him for some advice once. She was having some trouble with her husband. Those of us who are married or in relationships, we often have problems with our partners. And she explained that her husband was just so annoying from the moment she woke up in the morning, from the time she went to bed. Her husband gave her no opportunity to practice because he was just like constantly talking at her from morning till night, just never a silent moment. And she was getting really annoyed, really angry with him. And so she asked Tokola over the phone, I was like, what should I do to reduce my anger? Like this is really pissing me off. Like what should I do about my annoying husband? And so Tokola responded by saying, it's like, oh, you can, when your husband's really annoying you, you can try to consider him a teacher of sorts by thinking is like, oh, he's providing me an opportunity to practice patience, to work with my anger. And if, my husband doesn't annoy me in this way, then how will I get the opportunity to practice patience and to work with my anger otherwise? And by shifting the way she relates to her annoying husband, that itself can be the method of practice, by changing our perception of the people who annoy us.
The Indo the morang like charang choga di data wo mata wachi giwi shinyen da woji dushi shana teni kerangi sem se di pe message shuk chumbo res kasi tsik di shuk chumbo ka mare tsik ji do kerang la dukja la nge tsik ji do tsik is just word tsik do when the word dukja je lage na you are very bad se the b a kare d the just word the tsik digi kerang la chapgi mindu tungi mindu kae chigi mindu tsik is just the word, just the letter rola the indo so di kerang sem dig reaction machina sem dig kerang ko labjo de la dona machina di kerang la nogyo mares kerang sem la nogu mares the indo kerang transform chini ko dugja labjo de la kerang pala dushi shan gewi shinye gi dushi sha geging gi dushi sha na kerang ko la respect le gi res kerang ko la khongdo lang mares.
And so the principle we're working here with is to understand that, in the case of this woman and her annoying husband, even though her husband might say bad things to her, these words that people say to us, they're just words. They're just conglomerations of letters. They don't have any substance. The primary issue here is how they affect our mind, how they impact our mind. Like, for example, the word bad, say if her husband's saying bad things to her, bad is just the letters B-A-D put next to each other. That word is just a word. It doesn't have the capacity to harm us as such. What does harm us is our own mind, our own reaction to these words. And so if we can transform our mind and transform the way that we react to these words, in this case by considering an annoying husband or an annoying partner as a teacher, then no matter what they say to us, it can't harm our mind. And if we transform our perception in this way, then we can develop a kind of respect for the people who say bad things to us, or the people who annoy us, and as such, our anger is diminished and we're no longer burdened by this affliction.
Ni kerangi di midila lakbardu gewishini nagi gegen re samna tene dilaya yonde chigi res kerangi gewishini duji shana ngala pengi rumado kerangi kongdo laegi yul chagi mares kerala yonde xie da gyön da yonde ni ngo xie da gyön da yonde ni gi langdur gi kaso gore ne töngengi yul chagi res gegen chagi res kerangi kanse husband annoying di kerang dende ji lenthumna kerang annoying chagu mares kerangi gewishinye chagres kerang respect ligre kadi shokbane o nga gewishinye nga yana ngai gegeng tulku injure tang injure ngai kyogadela tulba chine tang injure sine dende duji chago res.
And so especially the instruction that Tulku discussed with this person is that even if on top of considering her annoying husband a teacher, she can consider him a spiritual friend, someone who points out both our faults and our qualities, and thus enables us to traverse the spiritual path, then this is a tremendously beneficial change in perception. This is incredibly beneficial for our mind if instead of generating anger, which is an affliction with regard to our annoying partner or her annoying husband, is yapping at her from the moment she gets up in the morning, from that first moment that she gets up and hears her husband yapping at her. If she can develop the perception, it's like, oh, this is my teacher. He might even be a Tulku. He might be some emanation of the Buddha, and generate pure perception and respect instead of anger, then this is a great achievement, a great transformation in our minds that is extremely beneficial if we can transform our perceptions like this.
Dene sangye chumden dege dene kongi loma denzola du jindu nyamlen chidangi kor gejungi chue shi sene sungere gejungi chue shi gejung kongi loma denzola nyamlen chidang tede kadesena thangbo dela dig yang lar midex kaze michige ngal dungba ina su gyaba ina boxing gyab punch chiwa ina pa punch machiwa ra thangbo di niba dela tene chang duya lar chang midus chang sena tangi ngazu jigdo kerang la mimang ki la pe chek dukja lan tuni dukja dene laba ina kerang ge korla kerang pa malawa chi le malawa chi pa malawa chi niba de sumba de dene troja lar mitos tro sena khongdo su khongdo langba ina pa khongdo malangba sumba de dene shiba de la shejan lar mishes shes na ta ngazo ne scolding kerang la scold chena kapjo nang ba ina chu kapjo nang ba na pha kapjo mi nang ba se gejong gi chu shi sere sanje chumne de ge loma yin sungde chama la di na shi chu chi sho song re ta tanda kapso ba jasal la le changju semba ke se nyamle chigen ji na ten di inji mi ji chi go res di sanje chumne de ge song yo res gejong gi chu shi se.
So even in the time of the Buddha, the Blessed Buddha, our teacher, said that his students, his disciples, must possess 4 qualities. There are 4 ways of practicing that disciples of the Buddha must abide by. The first is to not return injury for injury. So this is speaking about physical abuse. Even if someone comes and punches us, to not punch them back is the first quality of a disciple of the Buddha. The second is to not return insult for insult. And so if someone is publicly insulting or shaming us, as we've been discussing, to not shoot it back at them, and to not return anger for anger. If someone gets angry at us directly, to not react to their anger with our own anger is the third quality. And then the fourth is to not return a scolding for a scolding. If someone is scolding us, saying bad things straight to our face, to not respond in kind. These, as disciples of the Buddha, we have to possess these 4 qualities. We have to have restraint in these 4 kinds of situations. Like this was, the Buddha said this directly to his disciples, that they need to train in these 4 ways.
이다 택바 첨보기 최자 마임바 디디 단다 년퇴다 되니 택바 투몽기 냠린 제지 직 가서 거래 제기 최지래 세상이 좀 내데 숭에.
So this isn't even exclusively a practice of the Mahayana, of the great vehicle. This is what the Buddha said even to his Shravaka disciples.
단다 가르잖아 년퇴 기나야 되니 신의 휴지 방와스라 신의 휴지 방와스도자니 르다 나기 다 르기 미기 숨가기 미기 시 최든도아 디게 통네 신라 네바 미체기 출dim기 생인들이 년되기 다 출dim 세나 신의 휴지 방와세디 출dim기들이 생이.
So even in the context of the Shravaka vehicle, the defining feature of the Shravaka discipline is to abandon harming others, to abandon any kind of conduct that would cause harm to others. This is
년되 된주 택바 년되기 신의 휴지 방와기 강라 되니 택바 첨보기 신배 신 팽기 지와디 택바 첨보기 생이를 뭐네지나 디기 강라.
And so if we're practitioners of the great vehicle, on top of this, on top of not causing harm to others, we need to also attempt to benefit others as well. This is the key feature of the great vehicle.
되니 단다 개중기 최시세디 택바 투몽기 되니 냠린 제기 둡 고에기 최지 차데 레스.
So these 4 features of a Buddha's disciple that we've just discussed, these are taught in the fundamental vehicle, in the Shravaka vehicle, with regard to how the Buddha's disciples need to behave towards people who might harm them.
디 조디 단다 메바 람드 케와다 딩외랑이 미니바 람드 케르바세도아 디기 냠보라드니 상기게 안데 숭유레스 근데 숭 디칙 다보두스.
So in essence, these 2 verses that we've read about bringing derision onto the path, or bringing what we may not want to here on the path, bringing unpleasant speech onto the path. These sorts of practices the Buddha taught to all of his disciples equally. This is fundamental.
이게 단데 자세 뭐죠 통미기 지부가 많이 받는 상계한테 개중기 출시에서 송도와스 출라가지 독자 동바이나 파기 마동 와치니 파 레마로 와치 수식 독자 라바이나 파 말라바치 덴데치네다 상계게 송도와스.
So it's not just Gyaltse Tongye Sangpo who made this up. The Buddha himself also taught this in the form of the 4 qualities of his disciples that we've covered. And so when in those inevitable situations that people cause us harm in some way, say something we don't like, as disciples of the Buddha, we're instructed that we must not react in such a way that we return their harm for harm.
Well, that's all the tanda chumagi dila gewishingi the keranzo su yinare ngaranzo tingza kashi office la lega legiyore kashi nangla changza jamni nangla shugiyore tene tingzangi chisoge nanglo la mitama chi stress yugin lega mangbo tene social media di kyachumbo yudu ngaranzo kondo pe chokbolangire chokbolayungdo dela and ni kyen mata wachini dela gewishini gegen samne chama danji shubana shin 지가 랑라 yukyenda yende niga ta ngotre chigidu samne düshe shaktumna yaboyres ani dingone shaktugun jena jas ngone korange jangju sembeki laglen chagires.
So the main point here is whether we work in an office or we work at home or we're just traveling in public amidst large groups of people. These days, especially when social media is so prevalent, we're very quick to anger or very quick to react to insults or stress of any kind. And so the main point here is if we're able to perceive the people who would otherwise stress us out or show us anger or insult us as spiritual friends, as those people who point out both our faults and our qualities, if we're able to truly perceive them as teachers and spiritual friends in this way, then we're really able to practice the path of the Bodhisattvas.
Gyazela nani dene sungdu sangi ge gejung che shi sungdu lani dene ya kupa uzu gyamni miji gi du dungbai na ene desha ya kapje nang bai na deshin yin dokto shi na ya boyo mares kyongja geres kupa uzuk jini
Kondang nye hagama song la kupa
uzuk sena is kazi kerangi gyase lagle nangni dene sungdukda kyo dukja lab sona changdu sona mimangkile dukja lab sona kerangi soba gom gore sene labgi du sene kerang khaso gore chige usu kukpa usu sen injil khala gina gas
argue repe
la argue mare kerangi meaning kaya ha magoni ta pejana de labdu teni ngege and chigi inzel das kerangi soba gomdena pengi mare ngone gi jumsin shene midige ngala dukja lana ko duksum gi gone labdu ko ning ja ha magone labdu kola teni gumse ha gone keraya ning je goe gi jumsin de keran shene teni soba gomtu baina Tene dende gas la len dende sung do sung be gi gyumchen dende re do kana ha go ne dende midila giwi shini dushi shatumna pen chimbo ti ma yimba daga gi bejana labdula na okay la de sanyi yang long la ne ya bo ma res.
So when we practice in this way, if we're trying to practice according to the way bodhisattvas practice, we can't just force it stupidly. We have to know the reason behind why we practice in such a way. And so for example, if someone publicly insults us and we just think it's like, oh, they're my spiritual friend, they're my teacher because it says so in the practice of the bodhisattvas or the Buddha said so, then that's not really going to help much, because when they insult us the next day, we'll just get angry again. But if we understand the reasoning behind why we should transform our perceptions as such, then it's really beneficial.
Dene di gas la len nang lo la dende sung du dende re do nyamne china ende yongure dende phen dende yongure sa ko na dene ngone phen thog res rang li semya de nga ja chung ru dwe da nyom mong ba nyung ru dwe gi di cha gi res ka so ken cha gi res.
And so through the course of our study of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, if we're able to really understand, oh, this is why this is taught this way, this is why we should perceive such people in such circumstances as beneficial, as spiritual friends, and we understand the benefit that these kinds of situations actually bring us, then we'll be able to actually practice in this way and not just understand the teachings, but actually put them into practice. And these situations can really become conditions for us to advance in our spiritual path.
Lazo dene Tsering de samsha gi is dene chwa rayuna chwa tile.
So we'll leave it there for today. If there's any questions, we can answer questions now.
La
Manakagi tiwa di leptu inang lola ani kirang hagosonge
hago mason la tong mason. I didn't see.
Nyamshaki kapla tiwa kare tidusana nyamshak kapla la tonglen gape kapla Togcha lapkin ditso mepa lapkin ditso sel tapna jitopki kapla yang nyamlen cheyag yaga yongire pes.
Oh, re. Nyamsha gi kapsu tanda de nyamsha gi kapsu rang la narang dakshin jeba se do. Chikdang nyamsha gi kapsu dire. Ta jetop dan nyamsha se do zani nyamsha gi kapsu to meditation. Khora nyamle di ngarang la improve chegi. Nyamle le de ni sim gi gyula de ni tangyum setum. Dakshin nyamba dakshin jewa se do. Dakshin nyamba da dakshin jewa di ni nyamlen gi chini ngarang go gyula yobi changju gi sim di changju gi 장축 셈디 유장 장축 셈디 약보지 장네 장축네 약보 차베젤라 드니 제톱스도 마랑즈 냐사 냐도 조 카리 졸람 지바 예나야 드니 람케르 깽에 람지르스 시토그레 당보랑 라 캐패시티 요 마레 ability 요 마레 당보 냠샤에 갑수 드니 디 냠레 장네 드니 improve 치니 around the capacity down ability improve chisabijela tini normal activities around the jet post meditation se to activity sleeping, eating, walking, sitting, ta dende khade kapsule na ya kengen yongura ya ta samsara re damena yongsi damena thuksik re didu la kengen lamdu khirtuba yana suba gomtuba ani khorang la capacity yora ta ngarang zo dangbo ke le dangbo ba na tos ka nga yores ina da khale khale nyamsha kapsu jangai derang re takshin nyamjesin ko tanglen chi ya bo jangtum na teni jetop la len habo yores.
Oh, I'm already muted. So yes, definitely, we can imagine these people during our meditation. When we speak about meditation and post-meditation, the meditation in this context of Tonglen, or equalizing and exchanging ourselves and others, the meditation is a way of training in doing this. So first we don't have the ability, and then we do these meditations specifically to develop this ability. So whatever enables us to practice that during our normal activities in post-meditation is beneficial. The meditation should improve our ability to deal with the situations we meet in post-meditation, because we're going to meet with difficult situations in post-meditation. This is samsara. And so we need to know how to take these negative circumstances onto the path. And particularly, we need to train in doing so during our meditation sessions. And so yes, this can be helpful. Ani tiwa nipa leptu.
When we say good things about people who blame us in public, if they are not really good, will this be our fault because we are lying?
Tukcha lapken la mimang la yenten jena konsola ngonetane yenten tende mena ngatso tunma sheya ki gon chagerebe
when we say good things about people who blame us in public, if they are not really good, will this be our fault because we are lying? Or the situation kandire pena kerangi midila yakbo toba jero midi yakbo de midi pemese yunde shakda je ani khase midi ke ngarang so la mimang kila ngarzo la dukja labgi yena if they are not really good sina khalar ne kochumas me oh I understand me de khasi ngone dukja ina lar this is good question about who blame us in the public but they are not really good ina exactly ngarang so ki she thu mare mi di tu bu yi me ngarang so li ngo she yo mare su gi dukja re mare se di sasam se gore border who can judge ngarang so ya judge chi tu mare ngarang so sangge da judge se be gi judge chi tu ma ta ngarang judge chi tu mare di indu ngarang so chu like we are just judging he's that person is bad, but exactly we are not sure 100%. But why they are bad? Because they are ignorance. Only we know they are ignorance. They have 3 poisons. Because of cause of that 3 poison, because they're angry, and therefore they are bad person. But they don't know exactly they are bad person because of their ignorance. You know because three poisons, because they are bad, because you know that that causes the three poison. And kerangi pala three poison imba ha kodi. Ani korangi nondri imba korang nondri mare nondri sama yongsa de khani yonggo yore marikpa nyomomba ge thone lebre. The kerang ha gore kerangi da kola lung lang goyo mare kerang nyingji ke kores. Kongdo ge yo mare kerangi nyingji ke kores midila.
So Tukula spoke quite a bit in English. Effectively, we can't really judge whether someone is actually good or bad. We don't really know. Maybe the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas can judge, but we're not really able to judge. And but what we are able to understand is whether someone, if someone who blames us in public is actually bad or something, then this is the fault of their ignorance, of their three poisons. So because we're able to understand that any fault that they might have arises from their ignorance and from their afflictions, then we can develop compassion on that basis rather than returning their anger for anger.
And they are lying lado because we are lying siduzani chokchik ne samlo dana ngazu junshi get sheba dawre ina yang gaji gya 100% ngazu ge junshi ba resna is ngazu junshi ayo mare kharsna khorangi midigi public la kharang la insol yana public li kharang dugja la yongdu midi demba yimi ngazu ha gugu mara chikjane kharang la kyen thong de korangi judgment wrong chare. Not he is wrong, but his judgment is wrong. But that means you based on a lying based on his judgment. He is not lying because he is not really reality. You are not lying based on his reality. You are lying based on he is judgment. Mare?
Does that answer your question? So no, it's not really lying because we don't know 100%.
How can we help those who harm us? Bodhisattva dawaji ina Chanchu Simba ki tanda kapsu baba di gyasi laglen shisha chini nyamlen chiginji ina ani Chanchu ki sim gom gore Chanchu ki sim gomaya la tani jamba nyingje Chanchu Simba mayina le thangbo ina jamba ki goni gomaya da nyingje goni gomaya da tonglen chini tini kansa gore 단지 tonglen nyamlen chini gome tenzo ke chini pen thogura pen se de konsola pen thoe da ngoi so ngarang ke physical ni su chik pen ma tho na sim ge gon ne de member sim ge jukba sim ge sene mangbo yora de ko thone sim je la pen thoe mangbo yore de pen tho da ya dangbo changbo shena sanji jomne de ge ya sung yore kasi midila ngazu jimba tang tegang matub na ya chik ngarang smile chini midila pen thogure ani midila gesture subu yakpo chini gushap chini pen thogure semba dingne semba sambo kola khatu ina semgi thogni kola tepachi kola yunde jweni midila pen thogure 가르스나 펜톡스 두자리 ngazo ngosum pentogo marda ngazo ne kya ge mare ne ma kya to midla rangshin ge pentogo ko lung nyung ru chae ge ken cha ru ra
So if we're taking the Bodhisattva path as the foundation of our spiritual path, the main point in these trainings is the development of bodhicitta, which itself is based on love and compassion and exchanging oneself and other, as we've been discussing. But of course, there's two kinds of bodhicitta: the aspirational bodhicitta and the bodhicitta in application. And in terms of what is ultimately actually beneficial for beings, whether they harm us or not, only a Buddha can really deliver that. And so if we're unable to like actually help someone, if we're unable to give as a Buddha would give in that moment, if we're nevertheless able to train in love and compassion, maybe someone harms us, we can abide by these four qualities of the Buddha's disciples and smile at people and have respectful gestures. And if we can actually successfully train in love and compassion in response to being harmed by others, then this is a real Bodhisattva training, and this does in fact benefit the person who's harming us.
That's all.
Okay.
Mindoa?
Okay, so now we will dedicate.
Jigden Kamso Jumbada, Demba Nivi, Tenzen Belov Darshin Gebaye, Demba Yurini Betashi.